Morning, everybody. If you have a cell phone, please turn it off or put it on mute if you would, please. Call a meeting to order at 10:30 a.m. Becky, would you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Mike Copine,
Here.
Keen Hudson,
Present.
Katie White, Angie Shipper.
Here.
Okay, and also, morning, Michael. We'd like to welcome you to the meeting. We understand there's some technicalities, but you're still welcome to sit in on it, okay?
Thank you very much.
And also welcome to Angie. Angie is newly elected and will be serving on public safety.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Looking forward to it. Okay. What we got sitting out in the public? All official people, no public. Okay. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at the meetings minutes from last month? And if so, any corrections or additions, omissions? If not, they'll stand approved as read. Okay, we'll move into the department head reports. Terry, animal control. No. Circuit clerk.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just have something briefly. I'm sure you all know that the Pretrial Fairness Act has passed, which will affect many of our departments starting January 1. Last week, my office met with the state's attorney's office, probation, public defender, who am I missing there? Law enforcement, and the chief judge. And the decision was made that starting January 1, we will be holding weekend court. I do not have any details yet, so we will be working very diligently in the next couple of weeks to get that plan going. But again, nothing is set in stone. So I don't know if Charlie wants to elaborate on that later, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there any indication if that's going to be in-person
Yes,
work?
it will be in person, is what Chief Judge said.
Any other questions?
Everyone.
Angie?
How will that tax our employees in terms of labor?
That's in the works as well. Some of us belong to the union, so we have a collective bargaining agreement, and some do not. So I don't have any details now, but some of us may have put into the budget for next year, some may have not. I can only answer for my office, and I am covered for next year, thankfully. In certain funds, I have some overtime pay that can be used for my employees, but I cannot speak as to the other departments.
And when will we know more about that?
Hopefully before January 1st, by the end of the year, we should have a plan in place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Nobody's here for the coroner's office. Mr. Lally, emergency management.
We did receive the new aircraft. You approved it Tuesday?
Hey, Kevin, I'm sorry, the microphone, please. It's not, push the button to make it turn green. There you go.
All
Thank you.
right, there we go. Tough things pushing a button. We received the new aircraft. You approved it on a Tuesday. We received it on a Friday. We're scheduling training with the deputies currently, trying to make sure that everybody's versed in the new platform, but it is available. And I appreciate your confidence in our department of getting that new aircraft. So otherwise, not much going on right now. Just keep an eye on the weather.
And Kevin, for the sake of our new board members, when we're talking aircraft, we're talking a drone, not a plane.
A UAS, yes. Yes, correct.
Just wanted to add that clarity.
Yet.
Question for Kevin.
Yes.
I think I saw that the other drone was going to be fixed.
It is repaired. It was back in service within about 7 days.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, do they make simulators for training purposes on something like that?
They do, and it's available that you can take the controller, connect with, instead of connecting with the aircraft, you can connect with a virtual training simulator and work that way, yes. So
Are we using the old one though for training purposes?
We are. We've not deployed the new one yet for training. So we're still, I want to make sure that Mr. Baxley out of Airworks out of South Carolina has offered to give us a couple hours of free training. And I'm trying to gather the correct people. And scheduling is an issue right now with the holidays here. So we're probably going to do it after the first of the year. So, but he's going to go over all the basics with us before we can put it in the air. It's not a problem, but there are some differences between the old aircraft and the new. So the US is much more sophisticated, has a lot more capabilities, which will give us better chances of finding that 3-year-old when he's lost. So,
Could I chime in?
yes, sir.
Is there any kind of a minimum mandatory training hours before physically using it?
There's a couple things. Yeah, so I've been in this office 17 years now. So my plan is I call it my exit strategy. As I transition out of here, I want to make sure everybody can run everything I can. So recently, the last, I'm going to say 8 to 10 months, I've been training Sheriff's Department deputies in how to fly. And we have a Mavic Enterprise Dual 2, and I've been training those deputies on how to fly that. And then we had just kind of back up a little bit, we had an unintentional hard landing during a training, which affected the camera. We sent it back to DJI in California. About 7 days, we had it back, completely repaired and ready to go again. We didn't meet the insurance requirement. We have a $1,000 deductible. To repair the aircraft was $890, but still. And then the new aircraft, we're going to get some more training on that. But the guys have a logbook. They go out and fly either for events. The last time, except for the training, that the Enterprise has been off the ground was a missing car, stolen car. They got a ping from, I don't remember which vendor it was. And one of the deputies didn't even call me. He just picked it up, took the case, went out and flew the field, found it wasn't there, that it was not pinging in the correct area, and it wasn't a case. But the problem was they were afraid there was a mother with 2 children in that car. So,
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
you're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Kevin. Okay. Judges, I don't think we have anybody on behalf of the judges. Maintenance, Greg's busy. Greg's busy.
This might be a good time to remind everybody that Chairman Olson spoke about this at the December 5th organizational meeting. Probably the reason you're not seeing Greg here is, number one, he doesn't need any action this month, but also the chairman is seeking your approval this month to create another standing committee called the Facilities or County Facilities and Maintenance Standing Committee. And then Greg will report to that committee. So there's a couple different things in transition right here.
Okay, so we'll be removing that one then eventually, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Let's go with probation.
We have another graduation that's coming up. It seems good to have to say this repeatedly and often. But we have a drug court graduation that is slated for Wednesday at 4 o'clock that I would like to extend an invitation to everyone for. We have 3 individuals that will be graduating from our drug court this year. We've had over 150 people graduate since we started in 2005. And this will be our 35th graduation since we've started. So I have an invitation here. I'll be sure to deliver that to everybody here today, but you are certainly more than welcome to attend that. Again, that's at 4 o'clock, and that will be at Judge Ackert's courtroom on the 4th floor over in the new courts building. Just to kind of go off of what Amy had talked about also, the Pretrial Fairness Act is kind of bringing a new light to things within our office. As you know, we were typically a Monday through Friday office. We are now looking at doing work on weekends as well. So we are trying to get that worked out and determine what that might look like for our office. Just to give you a little bit of information, for the Probation and Court Services Department, what that will look like is we get an email every morning, typically about 5:30, 6 o'clock, That tells us the individuals that were arrested over the night that are in the jail still. That will still come to us on the weekends. We would need to determine who is going to need to be seen for a bond report. We will then have an individual that will come into our office. They will use the Polycom system from our department out to the jail to meet with that person by video, gather that information, conduct a leads report, and then put that information together into a report for the court. There's also an assessment that's completed for the court as well that gets attached to this. If it's a domestic violence type case, there's also an additional assessment, so it can be a little bit time consuming for our department. Further, if we've got more than one individual, we're looking at an extended amount of time to complete all of this information. Things that can extend the amount of time for us to complete the work are also the defendant's criminal history. If we get somebody that's got an extensive criminal history, that takes us quite a while to pull that information, put that information into a report, and then file that with the court. So to be able to gauge how much time it's going to be for us each week in the office, it's a little bit kind of up in the air to determine that. But right now, I've got a meeting with staff later this afternoon to kind of discuss where they are at. As Amy mentioned, I have a group of people that are also in the union. So working on Saturdays is nothing that's in the union contract. I had a meeting with them last week to kind of go over things with them. So we're going to touch base again this afternoon to see where staff is at. But that's what's going on in probation and court services. It's busy. State's Attorney's Office does a nice job of keeping us busy. Any questions?
My question with the graduation you're talking about, is that, does that program exist in other nearby counties, and how are we doing as compared to them?
Yeah, so drug court, we started drug court here in Lee County back in 2005. And actually drug courts within the nation were started back in the mid-90s. And they started in the Miami and Dade County area in Florida. As you can imagine, there was a lot of trafficking into Florida from the coast. And they saw an increase in the number of drug offenses and created a specialty court with that. That then has expanded throughout the United States. And what we have today also is not just a drug court, but also a veterans treatment court as well. There are also mental health courts, family courts. There are various juvenile drug diversion courts as well. But throughout the state, there are more counties that have a drug court than do not. There has been a lot of federal funding and state funding to promote those courts. And in comparison, as far as statistics and recidivism, I'm not quite sure side by side how we do. Each county is a little bit different, whether they are a diversion court, whether they would not enter a conviction prior to putting the person into court. Some people enter that conviction and then place them in as a part of their probation. So it's a little hard to do a side-by-side comparison, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other
Stacy, wasn't
questions?
Lee County one of the first in this area to start your court system though?
It was back in 2005. There was an initiative from the state's attorney's office at that time to proceed with it. So we were the first one in this area, in addition to Winnebago County, who has had one since the late 90s, but obviously they're considerably bigger than us.
I don't know if I should go there or not, but I'm going to ask anyway. How receptive or willing to work over the scenario of the union people working on the weekends?
I'm about to find out this afternoon.
Okay.
As you know, I don't have a budget for overtime. I did not request any finances for overtime. So I'm a little concerned as to how that's going to go this afternoon, but I'm about to find out, and I'll certainly keep you in the loop.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. Anything else? Okay. We have public defender here. We have anybody here to speak on that? Sheriff's not here. State's attorney, you're up, Mr. Boonstra.
Sure. We can dive into the Pretrial Fairness Act stuff. pretty heavily and probably talk about it for the next couple hours. I'll just kind of piggyback on what Amy and Stacy have already been talking about in terms of the changes. So there was the trailer bill that was signed into law by Governor Pritzker just last week. It made what I'll categorize as improvements on what it was there before, but it's certainly not where we'd like to see it at. It gives us a little bit more leeway in terms of holding somebody that we would not have been able to hold before. We talk about the scenario of somebody coming through Lee County with a truckload of meth, and we were not able to hold that person before this was the trailer bill was signed into law. Now with the idea of willful flight, that definition being improved upon, we can certainly look at that as somebody that could be held without bond. That doesn't mean that they will be, but it gives us a little bit more of an arrow in our quiver to look at when we're doing that. Now, the idea of the weekend court that we had before, the old format was basically only involved the on-call judge and the on-call assistant state's attorney or state's attorney at the time. We would receive a probable cause affidavit, criminal history, and when I say we, I mean my office, someone from my office, would receive the probable cause affidavit, criminal history, and the complaint when law enforcement picks somebody up. We would review those and then send our bond recommendations over to the on-call judge. The on-call judge would then look it over and then find probable cause or not find probable cause and set bond. That was basically the crux of it, and then they would send it back to the jail. And this was all done. We could do it remotely. We could do it through iPads, laptops, wherever you're at. It could be done if Judge Ackert was in Hawaii, she could do it then. Now, the way that it works, they've changed the language in the trailer bill. When it said without unnecessary delay, it now says that probable cause and bond must be established within 48 hours. So our window now is we have to do this all in court. We have to do this in person, which would now include, as Amy was saying, the clerk's office, probation doing their part, law enforcement, the sheriff's office, having a bailiff there. Should there be victims that are coming in? Should there be family of the defendant coming in? Because it is done in open court. Someone from my office, someone from the public defender's office. So it's going to involve a lot more than it was before, and it's going to be more manpower, more hours that we're going to have to spend on that. If we're looking at somebody being held by a verified petition for no bond, now that we're moving to this cashless system, we're going to have everything filed and ready to go. So you're talking about a couple more hours of work just from my office rather than somebody just going through and looking at the bare minimum of probable cause. What are we going to have them held to at this point? And then they usually get addressed on Monday if they do not bond out. That's not the world we're going to be living in now. The world we're going to be living in now is going to involve court almost every day. So that's one thing that you have to consider. My office, we planned ahead in terms of what may have happened with this, but also with the elimination of bond. I tried to plan ahead to make sure that we had the manpower that we would need for it. Again, we're all speculating at this point what it's going to take and what we're going to be doing in terms of body cams and reviewing thereof in 2025 and everything that comes along with that. So that's, again, appreciative to what the board has already done in terms of providing more allocation of money for resources for staff as well as another assistant state's attorney. So I do feel that we're ahead of the curve in that. When we look at a lot of the other counties around the area, many of them, and I won't mention names, but many of them have just pretended like this is not going to happen. And now they're trying to scramble to the finish to figure out what to do. I think we've got a pretty good holding right now. As Amy stated before, and as Stacy stated, we have been meeting pretty regularly to figure out how this is going to look, to figure out how this is going to be implemented. And we've had no less than 10 meetings involving the chief judge and most of the other judges as well, Amy's office, Stacy's office, public defender's office, my office, law enforcement, just to make sure we're ahead of this. Because if we're not, people in Lee County are going to be the ones that suffer the repercussions of it. So I think we've got a pretty good grasp of where we're heading for now, but a lot, again, as they stated, is a lot of speculation of how much time this is going to take from members of their office and how much resources this is going to take to implement this. And as we've seen in the past, it's an unfunded mandate that we're just trying to pick up the pieces and run with. So again, just a very very peripheral idea of what this is going to look like and what we're expecting as we move forward. And I just gave you a pretty good idea of the weekend court. That's not talking about how everything else is going to work either with appeals, with some of the retroactive stuff that can come along with it, how arrest warrants may work now, the transferring of inmates from different counties around the state. Again, we can talk about this for hours if we had the time to do so, but I think we've done a pretty good job of getting ahead of the curve on it.
Charlie, has the state even attempted to offer any type of assistance to the counties? Because like you said, and everybody here, this new program is unfunded for overtime in some of these budgets. Has the state even offered assistance here?
So there has been, and Stacy will be able to talk about this a little bit more if you have questions about it, but AOIC is supposed to be, I'll say, heading up the pretrial release implementation. AOIC, from what I can tell, what I've been told, is very much behind on what the implementation will look like. But again, Stacy's office has done a good job, a very good job over the last couple of years of being ahead of this. Even before we knew this was coming down the pike, Stacy had been ahead of this. She had the forethought of seeing, we're going to need to have these type of evaluations done beforehand. We're going to need to be able to do X, Y, and Z to make sure we cover all of our bases. So that's why AOIC doesn't even feel as though we need to have one of their offices in our area because of how well Stacy's office has done. So I'm not as concerned about that portion. I think she's done a good job of getting ready for that. There is, in the last trailer bill, a grant program for the public defender's office that I think will only last for the first year of implementation, but it is to help them kind of work towards getting the office where it needs to be for the implementation. There's been discussion of a statewide public defender system. I don't know if they'll go to that or not, which would mean that basically the entire state would be run by the office of the public defender, then they put employees in certain areas and whatever it may be. Now, I talked about the appeals portion a little bit. As you see on the agenda, coming down here a little bit, the appellate prosecutor's office. The appellate prosecutor's office handles all of our appeals. They handle conflicts as they may come in from my office. They're there for us to give us any type of legal guidance if we have any issues that come up and we say, hey, we've got this scenario. What is it you think we should be doing here to make sure that we're on good footing for an appeal? With this new Pretrial Fairness Act, the defendant, if they are held without bond or if they were given conditions for their release, can appeal those conditions or can appeal that finding by the court that they're held without bond. Just as a matter of right, they're able to do so. So I'm assuming basically everybody will appealing because why would you want to be held without bond? And no repercussions will come from that. We have to handle that in my office now. The appellate prosecutor's office can't handle that, and they've actually dictated that in the statute that it's going to be the state's attorney's office that handles those specific appeals. The public defender's office, in the same respect, are going to have to handle the appeals for that no bond or the conditions, whatever it may be. They just don't have that training, just like most of the people in my office don't have that training. We don't handle appeals. The only places in Illinois that handles their own appeals in office, Cook County, which is just how it works. So we're working through that, trying to figure out how that's going to work. A lot of it's going to be an abuse of discretion argument for the appellate court. And the appellate court is going to be slammed with appeals because all the inmates have are this time to be able to file these appeals. And of course, they're going to do that. So that's something they're going to have to think about too, and how that infrastructure is going to work for the appeals. So a lot of this is not funded. They haven't given us avenues to fund it. But in that last trailer bill, the public defender's office does have that grant program for the first year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Boonstra?
Do you have any sort of like off the cuff estimate about, with planning ahead, how close we'll be to a budget for it? Like, have you already planned for, let's say, 80% or 90%?
Sure. So again, the speculation of it was that we were going to need at least one or two more assistant state's attorneys based on the influx of cases and trials needing to be set. So if somebody's held without bond, Just say somebody comes in today, they're held without bond because of the new system. We have 90 days to bring them to trial. Traditionally, it was 120 days if they're in custody or 160 days if they're out of custody. So we have 90 days now to bring them to trial. So that's going to be more trials happening more frequently. I think the way that we're set right now with the additional assistant state's attorney, we're going to be in good footing to do so. I asked for more money last fiscal year for the budgeting of staff. We were actually looking for another staff member because when 2025 comes around, we have body cam footage coming in. Somebody's going to have to be getting all the body cam footage together. It's hours and hours of review that we're going to have to look through. And there's going to have to be editing of it too, because there's going to be times where a juvenile may be mentioned in the body cam footage that otherwise would not be given through discovery. So there's that kind of small stuff to think about. The county board had asked me at that point when we asked for an additional staff member to look at maybe just trying to spread the money that I'd asked for across the staff members we have, because you look at the perks that come along with another person coming on board. You get the insurance, you've got the time off, the county's paying more for that. So I said we'd look at that and see how we can do for the next year in terms of the bond reform and in terms of body cam footage coming in. So I can't give you a good number with it. I know that's a long answer to a short question, but I can't give you a good number for it. But I think we're at a pretty good spot right now to see how it's going to work out this first year in terms of the staff in their workloads. They understand that they're getting paid more because they're expected more too. So we'll see how it works. They're already pretty overrun right now in terms of the caseload that we have, and it's only going to get worse with the body cam footage coming forward. But I think at least this first year we'll have a pretty good idea.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just add to that really quick, Angie, I would say that is a fair statement for all the departments involved. The county board in the budget for this coming year tried to find that compromise position in budgeting for some of the things and asking those department heads to be very careful and cognizant of the budget and think about where they might want to hold off, because to use Charlie's word, a lot right now is speculative. The only thing we know for sure is it's going to be more work, how that all plays out. So actually, I would give kudos to every department that's involved here for working with the county board on the budget. So some things were granted and other things were held for future discussion when we see how this plays out. So there may be changes coming forward in next year's budget to account for those things that we asked departments to hold off on until we know more information about how much time some of these things will take. So everybody, I think, really worked well together on that concept, given that things are so speculative right now.
And just another idea with that too, the public defender's office during budget time asked for additional money for the 2 part-time public defenders that are there, as well as their office manager, because again, they're going to be doing more. But also there was the request for, I think it was like $30,000 for a paralegal to help with the body cam and getting the discovery together and reviewing everything that comes through. So that's going to help them offset some of that time as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay.
Charlie did have an action item also on the agenda. I don't know if you want to deal with that right now too, the appellate prosecutor's resolution.
We're at that point. We might just as well go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So this is something that's done every year. It's in my budget from the last budget talks for this fiscal year. It's covered by my budget. And again, this is just to the passing of a resolution to have the appellate prosecutor's office assist us with the appeals, assist us with conflicts as things may come up. They just request this resolution to be done every year.
Any questions on that? We need to pass that on, don't we?
Yeah, I would make a recommendation to pass that on to executive and then ultimately the full board.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to do so, to move that on.
Move.
Moved by Mr. Hudson,
Move.
seconded by Angie. Any questions, any discussion on it? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Anything under unfinished business? I would have had, but Kevin cleared that right off of the bat. So we got the drone in, almost in service. Anybody else, anything under unfinished business? Okay, new business. I've got down here test of onboard voting system. Are we going to do that? or-
We are. Isn't it
Okay.
exciting, Mike? So we tried this morning at the 9 a.m. meeting and we kind of stumbled a little bit. So we're going to give it another shot. This is, again, and for the new board members, this is new to everybody because even the returning board members haven't really had a whole lot of experience with this. So we're going to give this another shot. So right now, this truly is nothing but a test. You're not voting really on anything, except we want you to see how this is going to work using the tablets. So how this works, as I explained at the meeting the other day, is the meeting clerk, in this case, at the committee meetings, the meeting clerk is Becky. She is actually going to open the voting when a motion is approved. By the way, we see this working in such a way that we'll have a lot of the motions, at least in draft form, pretty much ready to go, waiting for your direction and your tweaks. We can tweak it on the fly. And then we open the voting, and once we open the voting, then it should pop up on your tablet to be able to say yes, no, or abstain. So we're going to give that a shot. Becky, did you open voting? All right, so I'm going to.
Not sure where it is.
Well, I was trying to hit the test situation, but that's not doing it.
You approval?
There you go. You all get it?
No, ma'am.
All right, so test if you click on that. I did that just to refresh it.
Okay.
And now, let's see. Nope, it does not. I'm just refreshing.
No, that's fine, because that's what we were trying to do is press that.
Mike, you don't have it yet either?
No, I
So
don't.
I'm sorry to tell you, do me a favor, close the book and come back in and see. This is the problem we had this morning for
Okay.
some reason. Some of you were able to see it. But there you go. Oh, and others were
Okay.
not. So same thing, I think you might have to close the voting.
Sure.
Close the book, so close your book. How do you normally close your book?
I just hit the close up here.
These three dots.
Not doing it.
Not taking us to it. There, I closed the whole works.
That'll work. Now come back in. So this is exactly the problem we had
See, I
this
didn't-
morning, which is not acceptable. You all can't get into it because it won't refresh on the fly like that. At least that's what we think is happening, is that it's not refreshing accurately. So we've got to work through that. But the test voting is right now open. As Becky's got it labeled as open, so you should be able to get to it. Angie, do you mind if I borrow yours?
Go ahead.
I'm just going to show these guys what it looks like when we get there. There you go. Come back into the meeting again. Now scroll down and see if just right there, if you, yep. There you, oh, and view approval. Now see, you got it. So there you go. There you
Okay.
go. Now it looks like
Gotcha.
Angie's. You see
Got
view
it.
approval? Yep. Click on view approval again. Great.
Oh,
Oh, it doesn't,
okay.
my finger doesn't like my finger. There you go.
There we
And
go.
now you're all in the same place. So you can check yes, no, or abstain. You can change your vote if you accidentally hit the wrong button. But, so don't panic if you hit the wrong thing. Just put any one of those just as a test. And then we're going to show you what happens when Becky closes the vote. And Mike, are you at home? Are you able to see, are you on Zoom? Are you able to see the open and close? If not, it may be that you
No.
don't have the right permissions.
I do not believe I have the right permissions. I tried getting in touch with Wendy. When I do click view approval, oh, it now says it.
Well, so technically first of all, Mike, this is Wendy speaking.
Oh, I'm
and-
sorry, Wendy.
No worries. And technically, the permissions, because you're not technically a board member yet, you technically shouldn't have permission, but I might have turned it on thinking that you then could test it and see what it looks like from your end. All right.
And there we go.
All right. So So again, the way this will work, then the chair of the meeting, in this case, Mike, will actually announce that we're closing the voting. So if you want to go through that process, Mike, and close the voting, that will signal the meeting clerk to close the voting up here, and then it'll display the results. All right.
Okay, voting is now closed.
And so now up on the screen, and Mike, I know you're not able to see this. This is the screen in our room. Up on the screen, it will show the votes, which I can't read because of the angle I'm at right here, but it says how many yeses, Becky? So we had 2 yes votes, and we had, it looks like 2 abstain votes. We had no votes. So this is the way it'll record up on the screen once you've all voted. Again, in the small committee setting, this isn't a big deal for us to be able to record these votes, except that once you do that, it'll import into our minutes documents easier. So every vote will be a roll call vote, and your name will be associated with every vote you make. But also when we get into the full board meeting, having that tally up for the meeting clerk, in that case, Nancy Peterson, it will be helpful because it'll display up there on the screen once you've all voted and the voting has been closed. Okay. I will remind you, I did talk about this the other day, but there are some perfunctory things that we're not going to have you use this for, like the roll call vote for attendance, approving minutes, adjourning the meetings. Those are the votes that we will not have you be doing. And it's really the substantive votes that we'll have you doing and using your tablet on. So we got some work to do to figure out this refresh thing. I'm a little frustrated with it. Any other questions or comments on that process? All right, Mike, that's all I had on that agenda item.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. I'm looking forward to that being full bore.
Me too, if I could get the darn thing to refresh correctly.
It'll all get worked out. I have confidence in that. Wendy, do you have anything that you want to cap up?
I already touched base a little bit on the facilities committee, so that'll be coming before the full board, the idea of adding that standing committee for facilities and maintenance. The chairman is also discussing a couple of ad hoc committees that'll be somewhat a continuation of what we've done in the past. For example, in the last year or two, we've had a ad hoc committee working on renewable energy ordinances. We also need to do some more work on just the regular zoning ordinances. So he is considering creating an ad hoc committee that should be moving before the full board for consideration at the December meeting as well. And there'll be a resolution that'll kind of identify what that ad hoc committee responsibilities would be. I can't think of anything else unless you all have any questions for me. And of course, we've got Mike Pearson's appointment will also be on the full board agenda for this month. So then officially he'll be able to vote in the future.
All right.
Anybody have any other questions on anything at all? We moved that resolution forward, didn't we? Yes. Anything for executive session, Mr. Boonstra? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by, and you get those. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thanks, everybody. Michael, nice seeing you. We'll see you when you can get here and get all your electronics and your responsibilities and everything and join the crowd.
I'm looking forward to it.
Only takes a short time for them to swear you in, so you'll hit the floor running.
All right.
Welcome aboard.
Thank
Welcome
you.
aboard to Angie, too.